This is making it here and there. Welcome to the show.
In a world where fast fashion dominates the industry, Narrative Threads challenges the status quo. An initiative created by Rathna Kalyanaraman, Narrative Threads works with cooperatives and collectives in India who are using traditional methods to create sustainable clothes and accessories. Narrative Threads encompasses more than just bringing products to market. They are preserving centuries-old weaving, dyeing, and skilled artisan methods, reducing environmental impact, and sharing the stories of these communities. You can read more about Narrative Threads and view the products at narrativethreads.co.
Thank you, Rathna, for joining me today. I'm so excited to talk about Narrative Threads and just all the work that you've been doing over the past year since the pandemic started. Yes. And I think what you're doing is very important. And I think a lot of folks out there are going to be very interested to hear about what Narrative Threads is about and what you're working on and how it could possibly change the way we consume. So I just really can't wait to talk about that.
Thanks, Alison. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, and I'm so excited. I'm so happy that we got a chance to connect through the other side. And this is what making it here and there is all about.
Yeah.
Is making these connections.
Yes.
So just tell the audience, what is Narrative Threads and what prompted you to start it?
Okay, so to formally introduce myself, I'm Rathna Kalyanaraman, the founder and the sole employee of Narrative Threads. Narrative Threads is an ethically sourced, handcrafted, sustainable clothing store. So, I was in the technology industry for 27 years. And, when you're that long in an industry, you think about a sabbatical. And for me, 2020 was like the year where it was thrust on me. And, I was like looking forward to it. So I took that. And then again, it's 2020. In my sabbatical, I had planned to do a lot of travel, do things. But, it was the summer of 2020 and we were in the midst of the pandemic. So the only thing that you did was to take walks to step out of the house. I was kind of, looking at the impact of the pandemic on different things, reading articles, this is the time I'm going to read and focus on other things. And, I chanced upon this the study by the Gates Foundation about the impact of COVID-19 on low-income fashion workers in Africa and India especially. Mm-hmm. And they were talking about, they put it very well, how not having a prom in New Jersey is impacting women in the fashion industry, in the low-income fashion industry. Mm-hmm. In Africa and India. So I got curious and I started looking, diving deep into that. And then parallelly, this has been happening in India. In India, this has been happening for about 7 or 8 years now. The farmers, as well as weavers, the suicide rate of the farmers and weavers were increasing drastically. And, the farmers are still protesting in India. But I was curious about that. So, I'm from a tech background, so I like to do a little bit of understanding of what's behind this. So I was looking at the supply chain and everything. So I was like, what can I do? I know this is a pandemic, but this is so interesting for me. And I started, reading about the different weaving techniques, in India. And I'm like, what can I do for these, in this, to be a player here and see, what good I can do. So, I started, again, it's all has to be remote. So I started connecting to different people in India. My family still lives in India, my parents, my brother. So I started connecting to people. I was talking about this and I was talking to different people who were doing this kind of thing. And then, I chanced upon, I was talking to a couple of young girls who are working in the fashion industry in India, and they work for this fair trade agency that's approved by the government of India. So I was like, okay. So I started talking and they were like, oh, then I was like, okay, why not I do something? So they were like, oh, we're like, there's a lot of stagnation right now. So our weavers are finding it difficult to sell. So what can you do? Like, so I said, yeah, I'll put my money where my mouth is. And then I said, okay, I'm going to kind of take some money out of my savings and see what I can do. So then I started looking at that. And then that's how it started. My journey started. I started putting together a small collection. It took me a while. Then I launched Narrative Threads. Yes.
And tell everybody about the different pieces that one could find in these collections.
So, so because this was like, my venture, right? So I couldn't go into complicated things, right? It's a new thing and I was learning a lot. So first I did was like, I registered my, I came up with a name and I just got URL registered. And then I set up, my social media pages. And I started, as I learned things, I started sharing it with people, and I started hearing feedback from people. So first my collection was predominantly, things that I didn't want to be size to be a constraint, right? So I focused only on scarves and saris, by an Indian woman. So Indian women like wearing saris and scarves. It's got a universal appeal. And then because I'm doing it from scratch, I know I'm like, a fair trade agency is mediating it. So it's ethically sourced. And I was looking only at sustainable fabrics, right? So like cotton, linen, silk, and woolen products. And so that my first collection was just that, but I focused on, these fair trade agency represents, they kind of sit in the middle between this weaving co-ops and social enterprises. There's been a movement in India for about 10 years now, like where, a lot of small social enterprises. There are big co-ops. That's one thing that we'll talk a little bit later. But, there are a lot of co-ops that's been there for, since India's independence, since 1947. Those are co-ops with about 30,000, 40,000 weavers, but there are also small socially conscious young entrepreneurs who are setting up things and bringing in some master craftsmen, master weavers and master artisans and master dyers to set up their own thing. So, so I said I want so as I was reading about the different techniques of weaving and from different regions of India, the different dyeing techniques, I kind of said, I want a representation from across India, right? From the south, east, west, and north. So I kind of, I said, this is what I want. And I went from there. So that was my first collection, yes.
And when you talk about techniques such as dyeing and weaving, these techniques have existed for thousands of years.
Yes.
And one of you said one of your worries is that these might be disappearing.
Yes.
Is that because of you have like a person doing it and that person's replaced by a machine? Or is it just because it's more labor intensive or both? Like what does that mean?
Everything, right? So, so this is all handcrafted and handmade. So if you look at the different techniques, right? One technique is called ikat, it's a tie and dye technique. It's called Shibori, the Japanese name for it. It's basically what they do is you have your thread, from fabrics. They go through a tie and dye process, and then they are loaded into a loom. And they are woven into fabric. So the thread that is used in the looms have different colors in them, and then
patterns So
and that gets woven into a pattern. So it's like, oh, this is this is very interesting, right? So the thing is, right, all these, as you see, right, the end-to-end timeline for if you really look at it, right, if it's a cotton, wool, or linen, or silk, these are all natural fabrics. So, cotton has to be grown, harvested, and, it's the cotton picked, and then, it has to go through a process where it gets converted into thread, and that becomes a fabric. And similarly for wool, right, it's cheap, and then other animals, and it gets in silk. There is sericulture. So, end to end, it's a long process, and, there are so many people involved in it. So obviously, it's an only very, it's a technique, as the height of the weaving industry at different points of time, right? In the 10th century, 15th century, every century had its prominence for certain kind of things. And when you have things that I can get an exact identical ikat hand woven thing, which is machine made and printed, takes end to end, it takes maybe 2 days. In 2 days, they can produce, thousands of scarves,
Right. Right.
So the price point is going to be different in both these things. So, and with our need to constantly keep looking a different way, right? People are going to, gravitate towards cheaper things, right? So,
Right.
lot of techniques at almost in the brink of extinction because of so many people. And also, right, some of these were done in villages and people were moving out and people didn't want to carry on the traditions of their families. It's a lot of things, right? And, again, availability and the cost, right? So those are the main reasons that, it's like it's a dying art.
And I think what you said was, with all the work that goes into it, it does come out to being a piece. I didn't say any piece, a t-shirt or anything. It ends up being a lot nicer. And when I say nicer, I mean it lasts so much longer. It's durable. It's breathable. It's not.
Exactly.
You buy clothes, and I mean, I'm just as guilty, right? I've purchased clothes that, after a few washes, it's just so, it fuzzes out. There's holes there. It's just, and then what do, right? You either cut, maybe you mend it, probably not. You end up just cutting it up, and even if you cut it up and use it for rags, that's even better. Most of the time, it just gets thrown out, and it's a shame, and it's a waste.
Because it's not meant to be durable, right? It's meant to be a fad. Like, people know that the market, the segment that appreciates that, wants a different thing next year. So, give it to them cheap. So which means you're going to cut corners, which means, bad quality of fabric, something synthetic that's produced in a factory, and the labor, use cheap labor, all things, right? So, and also, right, there are a lot of, I don't want to kind of, say, synthetic is all bad, because, you want to, you cannot go jogging in something that's cotton, of course, there's as we start supporting sustainable fabrics, things are going, more research is going to happen, and they're going to get good, thing that lasts, and, that's good for your, workouts or in the sports field, right? So there might be good ones, but, again, that might cost more. So it's like, it's that, yeah.
And, I had a thought, and I lost it. Oh, about the idea with fashion being the turnover of styles, and I don't even know how that began, right? Because I feel like, it's funny, the thing with fashion, they say it always comes around again.
Yeah.
What is there a way to I don't want to say to stop that, but where does that even come from? This idea, is that just part of capitalism, or we just got to keep turning it over to make money and make profit, or is that?
Yes, so it's basically quick money business, right? So basically they want, so the inspiration usually comes from a catwalk or celebrity culture, right? So they see that and they want something immediately, right? And now they know there is a need for that. So there is a demand for that. So find the quickest and easiest way. And my business is going to be structured around giving, what people want, instant gratification. I've heard, if Kim Kardashian wears something today, there are people following her. So it just takes less than 48 hours, they have a replica of that. And then, when I was talking about this fast fashion and, slow fashion, right? The slow fashion is where, we talked about this life cycle of creating, sustainable fabric. It takes a long time. So people have taken a lot of care. And this, I was thinking about it the other day. I was explaining this to someone. It's think about this movie Devil Wears Prada, right? So Miranda Priestley is Anne Hathaway character comes in, like, she smirks, like, what's this fashion in this thing, right? And this Miranda Priestley goes into this lengthy definition about what this thing is. Like, there are people, fashion houses kind of dictate what we wear and what color, right? It's a long process, and people who take that and make things out of that, it's going to take time, and it's going to, and if it's made with good sustainable fabrics, it's going to cost you money.
And that's a fallacy too. You can purchase things that are expensive, certain brands, or like I said, fashion houses, and it's still with exploited labor, and cheaper or not great fabrics.
Yeah. So again, right, when people move away from their core values, right? So there's an industry and they have core values. Fashion is an industry, like, core values. When they move away from that, right? Again, they want to make, like, everybody wants to make the quick money, make it like all about the money, less about the, what the ethics and the, what that industry is about, right? And
Yeah, and the other thing is too, when we think about fast fashion, the exploitation of labor, especially, it's out of sight, out of mind. And we know, like, it's one of those things, like, we know, but it's like it's not a dirty secret. It's like hidden in plain sight. We know that, this is made by somebody who probably is only making $1 a day, or maybe not even. We've seen the videos, we've seen the images, we've heard the stories of the conditions of these sweatshops. We know that they've had, like, fires, that we know that they employ children. We hear about it, even what happened was at the Triangle Shirtwaist Company fire that was, like, in New York City. We knew there were children, and children get their hands in the machines. So this isn't like a secret. Like, we've known about this for like over 100 years, and yet we're still, like, okay with it.
Yeah, now we don't want to think about it, right? So that's the thing, right? Anything, if it doesn't make sense, you need to understand it takes time to create something. How does this cost this much? Like, how is it? That's the thing where we don't want, sometimes, we don't want to question, especially, like, I don't want to go preach this thing to somebody who's a single mom, who's having 3 jobs, like, making ends meet. And I'm not going to be preaching, wear sustainable fabrics to her, for her. But I get, it really irks me when I see people with money and time, like, these are the, like, why are you not thinking about that? Why are you into, like, fast fashion? Like, why not? Like, and why should you have so much? People buy things that they sometimes wear once. And, the statistics about the biggest polluters next to the petroleum industry is oil and petroleum industry is fashion, And some of the statistics that you read is, like, nearly more than 60% of the garments that are produced are wasted, and out of which, like, more than 85% goes into, like, only 15, less than 10% gets, reused. All the others, either land up in a landfill or sent in for incineration. So it's mind-boggling.
Yeah, and that's the other thing too. You would think there's so much waste. Like, there's just, like, so where is the profit? But I guess there still is a profit to be had.
Yeah, so just think about that then. I think there's one company which kind of were transparent about their, the pricing methodology. I think it's Everlane or something. Okay. So you can compare, like, the cost, what it takes to produce something, and then when it become big businesses, right? You have this big showrooms, you have these, like, it becomes like, irrationally expensive, why, it's crazy to see that. Yeah.
So when you think about clothing lasting, what are some ways that, especially the clothes that that are pieces that I can purchase through Narrative Threads, what are some ways that I can preserve these clothes? Because they say, I think there was, I don't know who it was now, but somebody said, oh, I never wash my jeans, and everyone was, like, really sheeped out. They're like, oh, but they say, like, you really shouldn't be washing your jeans every time you wear them. I mean, or whatever. I mean,
Yeah.
obviously they get like dirty, like they get like dirt on them, but
Yeah. I know there's like, I follow a lot of these fashion magazines and sustainable clothing accounts, and they have this beautiful, gifs about like, what needs to be washed, how many times. I think I usually want to follow the instructions that is given in the with the clothing that you buy, dry clean only. So I think, they know what they're talking about that. But, again, like how many, like, I always go by the number of times I wear it. And like, am I, it's like, am I doing something very active,
Right.
and am I wearing it just for a couple of hours? Should I wash it? If it doesn't look dirty and if you feel like you're clean, as long as you wear your clothes,
Yeah, if
after
you're
you
sitting in your house all day, you're not exerting a lot of, you're not exercising.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, like cotton, like if it's like vegetable dyes, right? The ideal thing would be that what I do is like, the first wash, it's a little bit of effort. You can do it anywhere. Like, it's like, it's cold water with a little bit of salt. So that salt kind of binds the,
Okay.
if it's vegetable, if it's using vegetable colors, vegetable dyes. So you do that, and just you can hang dry it. I've seen even in apartments, like I've had that. I'm obsessed with cotton, so I used to just bring it out, and I always used to wash cotton when it was like winter and the heater was on, especially in the Northeast, right? So your bathroom, it's like really hot. So
Yeah.
so wear it. I will go by the the number of wears and how dirty it is, like and then generally follow the instructions that's given. Like some of the silk, it's better to dry clean it, and some of my silk saris, because that's not the first layer that's touching your body. So I wear 5 or 6 times, Yeah, so it depends on that. And take a little bit of care, and don't like roll it up and hang it, and that way you're not ironing it too much, but you're ironing it like things like that. So not to wash all the time. And my jean I wash after 6 or 7 wears, at
Yeah.
least 20 hours I should be in that.
Same, about the same. If I'm not sweating, but yeah, about the same.
Yeah.
Although I feel
like
like
I don't understand why people wear their the bedding, like like why they wash it like in 2 days, 3 days. Like I leave it on for a week.
Yeah. Well, I was
You're
gonna
going
say the thing with jeans nowadays. I couldn't tell you last time I really wear jeans because of the pandemic. But I'm more about that. I'm more about that cotton life now.
Yeah.
It's a lot nicer. I wanted to talk about. We did slightly touch on it, but this idea of greenwashing, because we see. I mean, a lot of we know one company in particular that's been getting called out on it because they've been showing a lot of commercials over the last few months saying, well, we're sustainable and we use sustainable this and sustainable that. Meanwhile, like we know that that's a lie. So are there any like companies that are doing anything, and why do they do this? What could they make any change? I mean, I'm sure they could make changes to their practices.
So you should go beyond that, right? I saw that commercial, right, where they have this this one of the, I know it's a brand which is like the top 5 fast fashions in the world, and they have this in a mall. They've set up this glass kind of a store with glass walls, and then you have these you have this like it's like the it got this impactful like a
display
show there, like so it's like a machine, and on one side you put your things that you want to recycle, and the other it goes through a shredding and everything, and it comes out as like what's like that's one thing, like the marketing gimmick, right? To go beyond that and see like what it's made of, and like if there are how transparent they are about their where they're sourcing things from, all that matters. I know, like but I also don't want, when people are making an effort, when the big brands because of all these knowledge, if they're making some real effort to get sustainable. We don't want to kind of, shame them and say, we're not going to, but, we need to kind of, draw the line somewhere and allow them to come into the sustainable thing. We don't want to kind of, I also think like when we're talking about the sustainable, not into like either shaming people or even like, organization, right? It'll be a slow process, right? Does that mean, are we going to be angry with these people? There are still people working for these companies. They are like, just putting food on their table for their kids. So, are we going to kind of, let's lock these big fast fashion houses down? It's like, sometimes you look at the human impact as well. So, it's a constant drumming of the message, and like, so all of us change in a meaningful way.
And I think too, there's a company, I don't even know if they're in business anymore. Maybe they are. They are, their big thing was made in America or made in the USA. And I'm sure you know which brand I'm talking about. The owner of this brand has like gotten himself in trouble. So that's why I'm saying, I don't know if they're still around. But really, when we think about made in the USA, automatically we're thinking like, oh, well, that means that everybody working for the company is making a fair wage, and maybe it's sourced in the USA, and that the whole thing is just like a fallacy.
Yeah. So again, right, you you always look at the life cycle. So let's say if it's made in USA cotton t-shirt, where was the cotton grown?
Right.
Where was it, sent to be converted into, a thread, right? And then where did it go to be woven, into fabrics? And then the fabrics go into, the dyeing and the processing for coloring and the printing and other things. And where was it gone? Where did it go? So all these steps matter as well. So, they might have finally put it together. I know I was reading this article the other day about the handbags made in Italy. Like, that's the thing, everybody wants that, right? So, some of it is they kind of circumvent this thing. So every little thing that they need for this handbag is done in some other country. And the final thing, the bare minimal work is done in Italy. So, but you can say like, but there are like different countries have different rules around that. So, so it does not necessarily mean everything like cotton, we're not growing cotton in the USA. And like, we don't know what are the ethical practices that are, used when we are acquiring the fabric itself, right? And that fabric to get into from cotton to fabric, it takes so many steps. How is that step? So there are a lot of things involved. So yeah, it's a complicated thing once you go in there. Yeah.
And to pretend like sweatshops don't exist in the US.
Oh, that's another thing, right? So again, that the same article that I read about, right? You'll be surprised to know that there are a lot of sweatshops in Europe and US itself. Like,
Really? Oh man. Yeah. I mean, in fact, we talk.
We always associate sweatshop with somewhere in South Asia or because Southeast Asia. But now because of the pressure, right? These government, this is like a big part of their economy. So they're, self-regulating and trying to say like, hey, we follow these standards. This is what we do. This is what we're doing. So, now the focus is like, not in the developed countries anymore. So there are a lot of things happening here. So yes. Yeah.
And I just wanted to take it back a notch and talk about this idea of just consumerism. As a society, generally speaking, when we purchase something, it could be anything, could be clothes, could be food, could be widgets. We don't think about, I think, at least I don't, I'm trying to get better at this. We don't think about how it gets on the shelf. It just like, we need it. We go to the store, we buy it. We maybe use it because, half the time we buy stuff, we don't even end up using it and end up in a drawer. And then we end up throwing it out. Well, it's reached its life cycle and we just toss it. And what are some ways that we can change the attitude surrounding consumerism and just shifting that mindset in your own opinion?
Yeah, I think, in a lot of things, it's always the young people, who have that inquisitive mind, who question a lot of things. And there are a lot of say they don't want to accept the status quo, right? Why? They're asking people, the home ownership, you know, when it comes to the millennials is much lesser. Like people are questioning like, why, and, you know, and because, you know, like there were time, like, you know, maybe few decades back, right? You know, we didn't know, like you were talking about out of sight, out of mind, you know, and I think, you know, social media, for all the things that we say about it, it's so, you know, it gives so much information on at your fingertips, right? So you know if there's something happening somewhere in some other, you know, part of the world, you get to see it. So they question constantly. So I kind of, you know, I'm always amazed at, you know, that they've popularized thrifting, like, you know, and but, you know, I know a lot of kids who only, you know, you don't buy clothes, you know, they always go to thrift store, they're so put together, you know. So they question a lot of things. So, and again, right, it's again for us, right? Again, this is, again, I always say it's for people who have time and money. Always question, like, you want your coffee to be fair trade. Like, what about other things in your life, right? You know, what about the clothes that you wear, other things, you know? We don't want to be like, you know, in our with our obsession for looking, you know, good in a certain way, right? You question something, right? And then, you know, once you start, for me, right, I focus on getting good quality clothes, right? So I don't like, I have to try hard, like to, you know, if it doesn't fit, I don't want to throw it away. Like, you know, I've spent a lot of money, so I take it in, do that, you know, learn about this and find the right tailor who's your, you know. So yeah, you know, you pare down your, the quantity, so you can focus on quality. Then, you know, then you start asking, because then you don't want to throw things away, right? Then
Right.
yeah.
It means a lot more because,
Yeah, it means a
well,
lot.
besides the
And
monetary
of
thing.
all the things, right? Good, we're talking about this, right? So when we talk, so when it came to naming my thing, right? So I was like, you know, I want my clothes like to tell them a story about where it came from. You know,
Right.
what is it? What is this technique? And what is this weaving technique? What's this dyeing technique? Where it came from? A little bit. So that's why it became very important. So every single piece of clothing you get from me, right now, you know, it's not very sophisticated. I have a printout that I get. It'll tell you where it sourced from, what's the material, with the care instruction. And if I want to say something about the weaving technique, like, you know, I know there was a revival weaving technique that in India, which was about, you know, this is a technique that was almost kind of, you know, going extinct. And then one fashion designer, she studied in New York, went back to India, and she adopted a few weavers, and she's like, you know, doing that. So I kind of give that story. Hey, this thing has been there for like thousands of years. So when you're buying something, you know something about a little bit about where it's coming from, what it is, like, you know, so you have some pride, because people, I feel like, you know, are intrinsically good. Like, you know, if you tell them the story, they'll be like, oh, they'll listen and they'll want to buy. And I've felt that, oh, I didn't, you know, that's one thing, right? So most of the things that I do are shows in my backyard, right? You know, that's how I sell predominantly right now, right? So I have the social media pages where I say things and I talk about things, you know, whatever research that I do, I share it, and people seem to love that. And they tell me, hey, we love all your stories. Like, where are the stories now? And things like that. So in the backyard, when I'm doing it, like, oh, they're like, I didn't even know that. Oh my God, this is from, I used to live like, you know, I was born like literally 100 miles from this thing. Like, yeah, did you know that they do this? He's like, no, I didn't know that. Yeah, see, you should be proud. Yeah.
That's the thing. It's like when we get something, I feel like almost everything, like you said, it's just having that background and having that story and having pride in things that you own, because I would feel that even like it used to be like you got a TV, the TV was for this is like predates me, but the TV was for the whole family, and you really
I grew up in that era.
for the two channels you had on the TV, you really appreciated it, and it really meant something to you.
Exactly.
But now it's like, well, everyone's got a TV, everyone's got a phone, everyone's got electronics, so that means nothing. And it's the same really with clothes. It's like, or even food, or even anything. Like if it's just like, well, whatever, it's no big deal. Like, but like somebody like with the food, somebody picked it and grew it, it means something. You know,
Exactly. Like you said earlier, right? The quality kind of, you feel the difference when you eat something organic, like, again, if you have money to get that, right? You can feel the difference, right? Then you enjoy it more, like, then, that way, if you're buying organic food, it's going to be expensive. So you don't waste things,
right.
and then you
Exactly.
appreciate. And then you're not going to be buying things that nobody uses. And then it went through all this thing and you're going to buy it because it's cheap and throw it away. Like, $5 t-shirts and things like that, right? Food, clothing, everything, if you have too much of it, you don't appreciate it. And,
Oh God, absolutely. I feel like there's people, I know people who, I think like their closets were stuffed with clothes, and they would still like say like they would go shopping, and I said, well, is it are you any happier? You have just you just have clothes everywhere. Are you any happy? Well, I liked it and I just bought it. I think people just even go shopping because they're bored. They have like nothing to do. And I'm like, you could
I've
be
heard
doing
this thing
something else
like
with your time.
retail therapy. I'm like, oh,
I don't know.
mean,
I mean, I know these people. I know of these people too, but
yes,
I'm not one of those people because
yeah.
I haven't purchased any clothes like in the last actually even last year I haven't purchased any clothes because I'm just like, that's it, no more clothes, I'm done.
Yeah.
I
And then
don't.
you realize that there are so many things that you have in your closet that
It's
you can
true.
wear, and like, you can spend some time, like, mixing and matching stuff, and like, create new looks. It's like there's so many things that you can do. Like, again, right, if you have the time and if you really are willing to think, right, you can always find a way to kind of put together the things. And then a lot of, now there are so many great thrift stores. My daughter was interested in, she got into that thing, and then we go to a couple of stores, like, amazing finds there, which you would never get.
Mhm.
And I still have my saris, again, right? Saris are just a piece of fabric, right? So I have, like, I've been collecting it, and I have my oldest dates back to when I was 14, like, this is like in 1984, I still have that, And then again, all those things, like, I always, like, I got it from parents, it's quality. It's something that you think about, right? Like, we were average middle class family. So, things were not bought when you bought. You spent some time thinking about it. Going shopping was the family thing, event. Like, you think, oh, we want this, the price point, this spot. And then you go, and, it's like, my first, the sari that I was talking is it was from a co-op, and it's still there. Yeah. And, I can see right now, because I'm focusing on things, I can see a big difference between things there where, people spend some time and quality is there. And then, you can get identical ones, but then when you look at it closer, it's, it's different. It's not the same. Yeah. So, it's all about, meaningless, not about doing some meaningless spending just for the sake of spending. Like, oh, I want to feel better, so I want to have go for retail therapy. Yeah.
I think too, also just, I mean, I always joke, I always use this, like, teach the children. I mean, this is something that, should be, I mean, I say should be as if like, oh, everyone has to do it, but it's true. I feel like people should be really teaching children, the value of things and how to appreciate them and how
Yes.
to
Not just
respect them.
clothes, right? It's the value of the time, the food, everything, right? How do you do it in a way that in some way, you're not, the whatever you have has not harmed someone in its journey to you. Like, that's
Right.
important. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and in a non-shameful way. I mean, you said you can't shame
Yes,
people, but maybe
exactly.
in a non-shameful way.
Yeah, again, right, this is a journey, right? So all of us, like, when I was like, I always liked, because I come from like a humid place, like in southern India, right? So it's like, if you wear anything other than cotton, linen, or
Yeah.
I guess linen, because it's like silk, right? You want a breathable fabric, right? But, again, right, when I had my daughter, like, I had this big wardrobe, but I was going back to some things that were easy to, like, which was easy to wash and maintain, right? So some of them were not sustainable fabrics. Some of them were like, but that that's at that point of, people see, they have busy lives, like you cannot shame them, but, you tell them, and, I feel people always, like, as if you keep telling them, if there's this message always around, right, people will start listening. And again, they need to have that time and money to focus on that. Yeah.
So you briefly touched on
There
it.
was like an interesting quote, a sustainable, that we were talking about, right? Sustainable habits are sustainable only if it's sustainable for you, right?
Right.
Yeah, it should be sustainable. Like, if you don't have enough money, right, you cannot be thinking about that. Yeah.
So I wanted to touch on something you mentioned before. You have your website, and you do these little fashion shows, I guess, in your backyard. I've seen the photos. They're cute. I know you have one model that lives with you, right? Your daughter.
My daughter.
Yes, but you have some other family members and friends that.
Yeah, so I keep telling, I pay her with hugs and good food, like,
So what are some of the other ways that you're promoting narrative threads? And I saw that you even had like some open little like pop-up shops in Melbourne. What are some ways that you're working on doing that?
Oh, it's predominantly on social media and, my backyard shows. I wouldn't call it a fashion show. It's just like I display things, and there I kind of, put the different the items that I've sourced from different clusters, right? The stories, my narrations, right? It's there. So this is like, these are the things, I kind of display it like that. And the one thing that I like about doing that, right, it gives me a opportunity to talk with people. So the first show, right, it was all my friends. I've been talking about it. And, I started working on this in August of 2020. And my first show was like, November 4th or 5th. That was my first show. So so it was all my friends, and then they told their friends, and they came, and it's I felt like I want to do this a little bit longer, because it gives me an opportunity to talk with people. So people come, and I didn't have lots of people, so people who cared were talking about it, like, I like to give, and then this is the story, I'm like, yeah, I know this. So people start talking about it, and they start telling you a lot of things, and that's how I kind of figured out, this is okay. So it's connecting with people, and they're telling me stories, and like, this is there, but if you do this right, it'll be nice, if you do that, it'll be nice. So I get that, and that's not something that I can do, like, where there is I don't have an opportunity to talk for a longer duration, right? So I want to kind of, it's a slow conversation that you have, and the people start talking, and it gives me a direction to, for my next collection, right? Mm-hmm. That's how it evolved. So I'm happy with that thing, right? So now, right, my friends have told their friends, and like, my friend, like, people see that, and like, from different parts of the country are like, oh yeah, I like that, they call me, and then I do they call me, and then we do a video chat, and I kind of, walk them through hey, this, and like, they like it, and they're like, oh, they're now I know my friend, she's in Atlanta, and she wanted something. She was visiting her 86-year-old aunt. She wanted to get something, so she went and she got it, and she's like, oh my god, I like this. And she had like, my aunt is 86, she loved it, and now their daughters want, are sending me notes, hey, yeah. So that's how, and I feel like I want that, because I was in the technology industry where I was not like directly, so I was like longing for that human interaction. It kind of makes me feel, and that's how I want to, I listen to all these, I listen to this podcast called Future of Fashion by World Business, and they're like all these they're talking with all the CEOs and everything, and they're talking about data and analytics and things like that. I'm like, like doing that for so long, like I really want to go away from that. I mean, I still can, there is data in my head, but but it's more like, in an organic way, I collect the data, not intrusively. So I feel, so that's how I'm doing it right now. So it's predominantly word of mouth, my backyard shows, online, and people talking about it. And Interesting that you should ask me this. My clothing will be in a store next week. Actually, I will be announcing it on my social media platform. So it's a kind of, I also don't want it to be in a place which is like which I want it to be in line with my brand values, like a co-op. So this is like it's a co-retail incubator space featuring a collection of innovative nation-based brands and local artisans. So I felt a connection. So I'm like, I'm going to be there. So, I feel like the slow organic growth is good for me. I can reflect on things and listen and change and get the feedback, improve my things. It's just me doing everything. I'm doing marketing, I'm doing the operations, I'm doing the procurement, I'm doing everything. So I like that. I like the thing right now. What is it?
You said you're wearing all the hats.
Yeah, I'm wearing all the hats and I like it. And, I'm like, my sister, you seem happy. And I'm like, I'm looking like I've spent as much hours working as I did in my job prior. So,
but
I
it's
like what I'm doing. Yeah. So.
And what would you say is the most important takeaway from all the work that you're doing?
See, it's just that I want people to pause and listen and to understand and question things, and we are in when it comes to how we are impacting this world and what we're going to leave to our next generation. We've started thinking about it in a lot of meaningful ways. And I want to I think I'm giving, them enough with everything they buy from me, enough information about what it is. So I that's the connection that I want to have with my people who support Narrative Threads. Yeah.
So tell the audience how they can find Narrative Threads online.
So I have a website. It's www.narrativethreads.co. And I have a Facebook and an Instagram page that is at Narrative Threads 2020. That's where you can find me. And you go there, you will know how to connect with me. I have an email and my phone and everything. Yeah.
Thank you, Rathna, so much for coming on today. This was really an interesting conversation, and I feel like hopefully people who are listening take away that, we do have to place more value on just humankind and where things come from, because they don't just come out of thin air, and the work you're doing is just very important. So I'm really glad that you took the time out today to talk about it.
Thank you so much for having me. And, like you said, we met through the other side and, we connected, and I follow you, you follow me. And This is my first, formal podcast interview. So, I was not really comfortable with, going on. And,
you're a natural. You're a natural.
So thank you so much for having me, and thank you for doing this thing, right? I wanted to discuss so many other things about the intercultural things, right? But I love what you do, and that's the space where I am at. So it was so natural to come here and talk to you, and it was a pleasure.
Thank you so much again.
Thank you for tuning in. If you are interested in being interviewed for Making It Here and There, please send an email to MIHATpodcast@gmail.com. Making It Here and There is an interview series focusing on ways in which individuals are using communication across borders and across cultures to achieve understanding, learning, and overall consciousness of the world around us.